Thank you. You may be seated. Welcome to International Day for Persons with Disabilities, celebrated on December 3 right across the world. And so today, right across the world in every country that would have ratified the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, there is some celebration taking place, acknowledging the work and worth of persons with disabilities. I welcome you here this morning, and as is our custom, before we get into today's program, we will breathe a word of prayer. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for who you are. We thank you for your goodness to us. We thank you, Lord, for this occasion that we're celebrating your children, persons with disabilities. We thank you, Lord, that as a nation we recognize the work and the worth of these, your children, and we pray that as we discuss matters pertaining to them and us, we pray, oh God, that you'll grant us wisdom, guidance, direction. We pray for our country, Lord, as we seek to rebuild, that we will remember all our people so that at the end of our rebuilding process, everyone will be accommodated in the best way possible. We thank you for your goodness, and we pray that you'll be with us in this event today. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you so very much. And so, in welcoming our minister, let me acknowledge our minister, the Honorable Pernell Charles Jr., our Minister of Labor and Social Security, who's with us today as part of our panel. We want to also acknowledge the Professor Senator Floyd Morris, who is also with us this morning, who will set the foundation on accessibility, he being the representative of Jamaica to the United Nations Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Welcome, Senator Morris. We also recognize the Jamaican Association on Intellectual Disabilities, represented by their Executive Director, Mrs. Marilyn McCoy, who will speak to this topic this morning as it relates to persons with intellectual disabilities. We also have in the room beside Mrs. McCoy, Miss Sanya Williams, who is part of the Executive Council of the Institute of Architects, who is joining us this morning as we get into our discussion for today. Beside Miss Williams, we have Mr. Alistair McLean, who wears a number of hats. He is part of the board of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, but he's also the vice chair for the Combined Disabilities Association, and he will be looking at the topic as it relates to persons who are blind and visually impaired. Welcome, Mr. McLean. Beside Mr. McLean, we have Miss Nicole Edwards, the newly minted executive director of the Combined Disabilities Association, and she'll be looking at persons with physical disabilities. We also have our deaf community. Mr. Kamar Groves will be presenting what does access look like for persons who are deaf. We have our deaf community to my right, your left. Our staff of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, other persons in the sector, disability sector, or recently or former director of the Combined Disabilities Association, Mrs. Gloria Goff Smallwood. We welcome her as a member of the board as well of the JCPD, and in her own right as a disability advocate. We also recognize our media partners who are in the room, and all our friends and those who continue to speak on behalf of persons with disabilities. Good morning. As we observe International Day for Persons with Disabilities, we stand at a critical moment in history. The findings from the Jamaica's National Accessibility Audit presents a clear and urgent mandate. Our key data highlights that across 6 major government ministries, physical accessibility averages 66% compliance. Digital accessibility averages 58% compliance. We are by design, not intentional, but by design, excluding a significant portion of our population. As Jamaica embarks on reconstruction and national modernization, we cannot rebuild with the same barriers. This moment must be the turning point where universal design becomes our standard, not an afterthought. That is why today we will focus on simplifying universal design, helping Jamaicans as a society to understand what it means, why it matters, and how we can finally achieve success for all. Now, universal design, some persons may have the misconception that it is just for persons with disabilities. It is not any special accommodation. It is actually designing for human diversity from the beginning. So universal design means creating spaces, systems, information, and services that is usable by the widest range of people without needing to modify or retrofit them. When we talk about it, we can look at a well-designed bus stop, a level entrance, a wide sheltered bench, clear route information, and a tactile guiding path. Who will this benefit? A student, an elderly vendor, a parent with a stroller, a tourist, a person with visual impairment, and of course, a person who has other disabilities, other physical disabilities. It is one integrated, thoughtful design that meets the need of everybody all at once. That is universal design. Proactive, inclusive, and smart. And it saves us from the high cost of designing poorly and then fixing later. And so this conversation we will have today looking at how do we rebuild an accessible Jamaica, more so post-Melissa, where so many buildings are flat. We have a great opportunity to rebuild an accessible Jamaica. And so at this time, I'm going to be inviting, just to set the foundation, talking about our obligations under the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Disabilities Act, Professor Senator Floyd Morris, who will open for us with that foundation. Thank you so much. My apologies. Before we move any further, let us all stand for the national anthem. And we're going to blend our voices together as we sing. One, two. Eternal Father, bless our land. Guard us with thy mighty hand. Keep us free from evil parts. Be our justice, truth be ours forever. Land we love, Jamaica, 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 land we love. Teach us true respect for all, stir response to duty's call, strengthen us the weak to cherish, give us vision lest we perish, knowledge send us, Heavenly Father, grant true wisdom from above, justice, truth be ours forever. Land we love, Jamaica, 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 land we love. Thank you so very much. You may be seated. Professor Floyd Morris at this time.
Honorable Minister of Labor and Social Security, Pernell Charles Jr., Dr. Christine Hendricks, Executive Director for the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, other members of the panel, members of the community of persons with disabilities, friends and well-wishers, a pleasant good morning to you all and a happy International Day for Persons with Disabilities to my brothers and sisters with disabilities. I'm very happy to be here today to participate in this seminar. And pardon me if when I complete my presentation you see me dashing through the door because I have a funeral service at the University of the West Indies for one of my professorial colleagues that I have to attend and participate. So, pardon me, I will not be here for the entire session. But I deemed it important to be here because of the theme that we are working with in terms of rebuilding an accessible Jamaica for all. You see, the issue of accessibility is foundational to the inclusion of persons with disabilities in our society. And I must point out from the get-go that we are now operating and functioning in the era where disability has been elevated to a human rights issue. And as a result, the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which was formulated in 2006, sets the international normative framework for the fundamental rights and freedom of persons with disabilities. And entrenched in the Disability Convention are two clauses that are very important to the theme that we are discussing today. because Article 9 focuses on accessibility, but Article 11 also focuses on the situation of risk and humanitarian emergencies. Now, Jamaica has just gone through or passed through one of the most catastrophic disasters to have hit the Caribbean in its history. The Category 5 plus hurricane has decimated a significant portion of the island. And based on World Bank estimates, over 41% of our gross domestic product have been affected. Over 1 million people have been displaced. And from the UN digital mapping system, over 140,000 buildings have been either damaged or destroyed. Included in this are buildings and facilities, houses that are owned by persons with disabilities. And we have to make sure that we build back a stronger and better Jamaica. And included, I am very happy that the theme is speaking to rebuilding an accessible Jamaica for all. Because this is where Article 9 of the CRPD takes effect. The CRPD mandates state parties to put in place all the necessary measures to ensure that persons with disabilities have access to public facilities, to public buildings, to information and information communication technologies, to public transportation. Make sure that persons with disabilities have access to sidewalks, etc. And this is a golden opportunity, Honorable Minister, to make sure that we get it right in the affected parishes. I think there are 6 parishes that have been significantly affected by Hurricane Melissa, and we are going to have to do significant reconstruction in these parishes. Now, there is something that I want to point out about accessibility. Because with the Disabilities Act and our Building Act, along with the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, public buildings must be made accessible to all persons with disabilities. I must say that the Disabilities Act has been brought into effect from 2022. And what this means is that every public building must be made accessible. And the government gave a grace period for organizations to get it right. So they have no excuse for not starting the process. Because one of the things that my friend Gloria Goff is quick to remind me of is that the convention is subject to progressive realization, meaning that we are expected to implement over time. What is inexcusable is no effort. And in disability law, accessibility to public building is treated as an ex ante duty. What does that mean? It means that the moment a facility is open to the public, it must be made accessible to persons with disabilities. No two ways about that. Because failure to provide the access to persons with disability constitute an act of discrimination. Because discrimination is talking about measures to exclude, to isolate persons with disabilities from access. And therefore, once the facility is open to the public, it must be made accessible to persons with disabilities. And the Disabilities Act supports the provisions of the CRPD. And one of the things that I am excited, Minister, about the Disabilities Act is the establishment of the Disability Rights Tribunal. Because with the Disability Rights Tribunal, when the rights of persons with disabilities are violated, they can lodge a complaint through the JCPD, and the JCPD is required to do an investigation, and then they can send it to alternate dispute mechanism or straight to the DRT. So, if a person with a disability should venture into one of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security building, let me use an objective assessment. If they should venture into a Ministry of Labor and Social Security building and it is not accessible, there's no wheelchair access, the doors are narrow, and the person is prevented from getting into the building for that service, and they talk to the ministry and nothing is done, that individual can lodge a complaint under the law to the JCPD about the accessibility to the ministry building, and the JCPD is compelled by law to investigate. And if the ministry fails to respond to that accessibility request, then the matter has to be referred to the DRT. And I want to say to members of the community of persons with disabilities that we are now at a different level in terms of disability advocacy. The advocacy cannot be about just getting welfare support. It has to be now about enforcing the rights of the individuals with a disability. And the right to accessibility is inscribed in law, the Disabilities Act, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability that gives support. And as we venture into this season now, where we are required to rebuild Jamaica based on the damages done to our country, we are required to build back better and stronger and more accessible. And Minister, I am looking forward to JPSCO when they are installing their light poles across this country. They must stop installing it in the middle of the sidewalk that impede and restrict wheelchair access and cause all sorts of problems for blind persons across this country. They need to take those light poles to the edges of private property, where it borders private property and government road, not in the middle of sidewalks. We need to make sure that whilst we are building back Jamaica in all our townships, in these affected parishes, they must be built with sidewalks that are accessible to persons with disabilities. It can be done, and it must be done if we are talking about rebuilding an accessible Jamaica for all. This is a grand opportunity to make sure that we put disability inclusion into practice. The schools that are required to be reconstructed must be built with accessible features for children with disabilities. The health facilities that are going to be reconstructed must be built with accessible features for persons with disabilities. Those houses that will be built, whether they are container homes or concrete homes, must make accessible provisions for persons with disabilities. It cannot be that we are going to be reconstructing our society and continue the isolation and exclusion of persons with disabilities. And I say to you, my church brother and friend, Honorable Minister, that you have a friend, you have a brother who you can count on and call on any time to give you support for disability inclusion in Jamaica. God bless you, and I wish you all the best for the remainder of the day.
Thank you very much, Professor Morris, for setting the foundation. We have an ex ante duty under the convention to ensure that access is in place for persons with disabilities. And as I always say, when it is made accessible for persons with disabilities, everybody benefits. Universal design. At this time, we have the different organizations serving the different disability groups that will be coming to share just 5 to 7 minutes on what does access look like for persons with physical disabilities, persons who are deaf, persons with intellectual disabilities, and persons who are blind or visually impaired. So at this time, I'm going to ask that our presenters come in that order. Combined Disabilities Association, speaking about 5 minutes. We're going to time you 5 to 7 minutes. Then Jamaica Association for the Deaf. What does access look like for persons with who are deaf and hard of hearing? And then intellectual disabilities, and finally, visual impairment and blindness. Thank you very much. Miss Nicole Edwards, please. Can you put your hands together for her? She comes. Let me say welcome as well to our audience to whom we're streaming this event live. And we know that you will access this information today and onwards on the JCPD website and also on the ministry's website, as well as the GIS. Thank you so very much.
Good morning, everyone. A warm greeting to Honorable Pernell Charles Jr., Senator Morris, our partners in the disability sector, civil society organizations, and all advocates joining us today. When we talk about universal design, many of us think only of infrastructure, the buildings, or accessible environments to include the roadways or the sidewalks. And when we talk about physical disabilities, some people may only think of individuals using a cane or a wheelchair. not remembering that there are also hidden disabilities to include chronic pain, which can prevent full participation in everyday life. It is also important to note that a person with a physical disability may also experience other sensory challenges that affect their balance, coordination, and movement. Therefore, careful planning must go into any design to ensure a well-rounded and safe experience. Universal design goes far beyond physical access alone. Today, we will highlight communication and web accessibility as an essential component of universal design for all participants. Universal design at its core means removing barriers by building or creating environments, systems, products, and services that does not require modifications, where everyone, regardless of their ability, can access and use them independently, safely, and with dignity. For people with physical disabilities, universal design is not a luxury. It is the difference between participation and exclusion, opportunity and limitation. Jamaica does, in fact, has a framework that supports universal design for people with disabilities. The Jamaica Disabilities Act, which supports other documents such as the Building Code that address physical access, and the Access to Information Act, which affirms that every citizen must be able to receive information in a format that they can use without any form of discrimination. Let's look at communication. Effective communication is the gateway to participation. For people with physical disabilities, universal design communication should include multiple formats for giving and receiving information. Information should be available in visual, audio, and other digital formats. Projection for visual and verbal presentation to bring across the message at the same time and clearly. Public announcements at hospitals, government offices, or transportation hubs should both be spoken and displayed visually. As it relates to digital communication, emails, documents, and online forms must be formatted to support screen readers. Clear language, headings, and easy navigation should be of standard practice. We are now in the age of technology. Features such as text-to-speech and speech-to-text greatly supports communication. Inclusive customer care service is also important. Therefore, staff in public and private entities must be trained to communicate respectfully and effectively with individuals who may have limited mobility or who use assistive communication devices. Counters, help desk, and interactive kiosk machines must be built at an accessible height so that persons using a wheelchair or that of any other physical challenges do not have to struggle to be seen or heard. All right, so I'm wrapping up. I got the time signal. Okay, so to conclude, as we reflect on this year's theme, Rebuilding an Accessible Jamaica for All, we must recognize that universal design is not optional, but it is a responsibility of today. When we design with universal in mind, we reduce barriers before they appear. We foster independence rather than dependence. We build a Jamaica every citizen is valued and included. Jamaica has made progress in areas such as accessible housing, the tactile symbols on our currency notes, and inclusive education, among other things. However, We must continue on an upward trend in advancing and embracing universal design as a commitment to dignity, equity, and human rights. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Edwards. Mr. Kamar Groves. Yes. Ah. So he would need the interpreter to see him. Until we sort out the volume issues, let me ask Mr. McLean. The only one that's presenting. He will be looking at how universal design for persons with blindness and visual impairments.
Honorable Minister Pernell Charles Jr., Executive Director of the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, Dr. Hendricks, stakeholders of the Persons with Disabilities community, good morning. Happy International Disabilities Day, everyone. When we speak of universal access design, it should never be the icing on the cake or the pizza toppings that pineapple or bacon or barbecue chicken toppings, if you may. Design, universal access design should be the norm. In the disabilities community, and at the Combined Disabilities Association, our mantra is nothing about us without us. I am here to present on blind what is important for Jamaica to be fully accessible for persons with visual disabilities. And in doing so, it is important to identify the barriers and the solution. I am going to quickly focus on communication, accessibility, physical accessibility, and also web design. So, what are some barriers to communication for persons who are blind and visually impaired? Well, many times the signs that are placed at numerous areas on municipal buildings or private buildings, many of those signs are in only print. And the print is very small. So you can just imagine that someone who is low vision is unable to read the text. So that is definitely a barrier. Another barrier is documents that are only in print and you don't have other, it is not in other formats in terms of audio or braille, which persons who are completely blind depend on. Those are barriers. Yes? So, what are the recommended solutions in this case? We are recommending that signs, it should be standardized, that the fonts are large so that persons who are low vision can read signs anywhere they go in Jamaica. We are recommending that documents at all times not only be in printed format, but it should also be prepared so that persons who are blind can access it, whether it be in braille or in audio. And it is important that I make this distinction. Why? Because there's an assumption that all blind persons are braille literate. No, it is not so. So the option of audio should always be available. Okay. So let me move now to some of the physical barriers that affects persons who are blind and visually impaired. Many times on our roads, there are no tactile markers or blocks that indicates that a blind person has reached the crossing pedestrian. In most instances, there are also lack of audio signals at the stoplights. And the minister, I am urging you to take a serious look at this one. I have been advocating for changes to be made for some time now in terms of getting more audio signals out there. And so what that causes is that persons who are blind cannot independently cross the streets because you don't have any audio signal at the lights and you don't even have the tactile markers so that we know when we are at the pedestrian signals. Senator Morris would have already mentioned the fact that the light poles are inconsistently placed, most times in the middle of the sidewalks, and we risk injury. And sadly, even death, because to avoid some of these light poles, we venture out into the street and we are now at the mercy of the vehicular traffic. So that's another barrier. Now to address these barriers, we need tactile markers. We also need blocks that indicates the difference in surface. We need the light poles to be placed consistently out of the middle of the sidewalks. Those are some of the recommendations. Web design, it's a big one. We are in the age of technology, and we believe in access for all. What are some of the barriers to persons who are blind and low vision accessing, making full use of the internet? Well, many times the headings and links are not tagged. You also have situation where the website have a lot of images, but there is no alternate text that describe the images. Lot of time the elements on these websites are not labeled. So where you have videos or audio, you don't know where to press play or pause, volume up and down. Those are some of the challenges. And for low vision persons, a lot of the websites, they don't have the format where the text are resizable so that they can adjust it to the point where they can properly navigate and read what is on the website. Quickly, the solution for this problem: ensure that all the headings and links are tagged. Ensure that where there are images, there is alternate text that describe whatever images are there. We also want the form fields to be labeled, and we definitely need the websites to have resizable text options. We have made progress in Jamaica by ratifying the Marrakesh Treaty, and that has being utilized properly will remove some of the barrier in terms of blind persons being able to put the material in accessible format without being penalized for copyright infringement. But we do have a far way to go. And in wrapping up, I'm going to use what Dr. Hendricks always say. Let us put our mind, hearts together and work together to build an inclusive society. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McLean. Our next presenter, 5 minutes, Mrs. Marilyn McCoy. And then we will have Mr. Groves.
A very pleasant good morning to everyone, to our Honorable Minister in the House, Dr. Hendricks, and to all our special presenters, the disability sector representatives, good morning. And I noted that Dr. Hendricks emphasized the 5 minutes. So I will be very, very brief. The group I'm representing is persons with intellectual disability. And I want to give you an idea of what are some of the characteristics of this group, briefly. Intellectual disability is a lifelong condition. It is broadly related to thought process. It is characterized by significant limitations in intellectual functioning. That's what we're talking about, our intellect, the ability to reason, learn, problem solve. It also has limitations in adaptive behavior, which covers a wide range of everyday social and practical skills. Some other time I'll get into that for you. But one thing that I must note is that the disability originates during the developmental period. So it occurs before 22 years. When we talk about accessibility, I want to take you on another path in relation to this group of people. For persons with intellectual disability, accessibility is about getting to a place, being able to understand and to take part in activities or services, as well as the right to receive information. And Professor Murray spoke about their right as it relates to Article 9 of the CRPD. But I want to just kind of walk you through somebody with intellectual disability and what the expectations are. When we talk about participation, the first step is that persons need to understand what's going on in a particular space. How do you understand what's going on? You must be able to use the service. You must understand what is expected of you in that space. And the third thing is that you must have some kind of support to walk you through what's going on in that space. The right to information. And when we talk about some of the issues that impact this population, we're talking about communication and information, access to those two. And I will briefly talk about some of the barriers that impact communication and access to information. There are basically 4 barriers that impact someone's ability to participate in relation to access to information and communication. And they are 1, pace, and I'll explain them, complexity, literacy, and stigma. These are the 4 elements that will determine whether or not somebody has access within a community, somebody with intellectual disability. And I want you always to reflect on the fact that this group of people will have challenges with thought processing. Okay? We know about pace. We live in a very fast-paced society where information is presented to us at some really fast speed. Right? You're expected to not just process the information quickly, but you're expected to respond quickly as well. Remember, we talk about persons with intellectual disability who will have slow processing abilities. So while you are presenting information to them, they are not able to analyze it at the pace that you want them to do it, and they are not able to respond to you appropriately within that block of space. So I want you to think about that. Persons with intellectual disability will have slower pace of information processing, right? They require more time to take in the information you're presenting, to understand it, and to be able to respond to it. Now, this is directly related to how the brain processes or performs mental tasks, right? So as you think about processing, you are thinking about how much time am I giving this person to truly understand what it is that is being required of them. Individuals may, when things are presented to them, they may become overwhelmed when too much information is presented in one go. And one of the challenges that we face with this group of people is that they become frustrated easily. So you are presenting, for example, an instruction that has 3 parts. What is appropriate when you are working with this group of people is that you would break that up into small bits. So you present the first segment, then you go to the next stage, and you go to the last stage. You cannot present instruction, all three components of an instruction in one go, because they hear the first, and they did not process the second and the third. Now, this whole ability to understand and to process information within a given time also affects their social interactions. And so a lot of times they miss social cues, and it takes longer for them to participate in a conversation. And that is why a lot of times, I don't know if persons in here have ever had any interaction with persons with intellectual disability, that you will recognize that the feedback is really not reciprocal. So you're talking to them and they're not responding to you based on what it is that you're asking them. It's because they need much more time to process what you have said in an effort to be able to respond to you in an appropriate way. What are some of the accommodations in relation to pace and the fast speed of processing? Is that one, we have to give people enough time to process what is being said. We have to break down information in small bits, divide multi-step instruction or processes into smaller chunks, manageable chunks, so that they can actually understand the first before we move on to the second. The other barrier has to do with complexity of information, which is really tied to pace as well. Yes, we expect them to process information quickly, but the complexity of the information that is presented is also a barrier. Meaning, when we talk about complexity, we are looking at the degree of intricacy of a task, project, or even an activity, where this particular information has several components to it. And they are expected to, and if you think about it, when something is complex, it requires higher level skills to be able to navigate or to understand and to respond appropriately. Now, unfortunately, a number of agencies, and we see this in the information that they put out about their services, they are so complex. And when you ask them to simplify, how they respond is by talking in a very childlike way. It's either they raise the voice and the tone of the voice, or they speak to you as if you're a child. Now, one thing that is important when you're working with people with intellectual disability is the age appropriateness of the information that's presented. Now, you cannot present an adult with information that you present to a child. So what it is that we are saying is simplify the information that you put out there. You also need to use plain and simple language. I think a lot of persons do not truly get that. What it is that is meant by plain language, you remove the jargons, you remove the words that are complex. You talk to people in a very literal way so that they truly understand what it is that you're trying to say to them. You also need to adjust physical environments. People look at communication only as verbal, but you are putting people in an environment that is very cluttered. Remember, we talk about thought processing and the ability to navigate their way in any space that they're in. You also have to look at the physical layout of a room or a building. The other barrier is literacy. Persons with intellectual disability will have low literacy level, and that is a fact. The majority of them, the literacy levels are so low that, it impacts everything in their lives in relation to understanding and using information. I like to liken this particular activity to an experience I personally had. I remember going overseas to a conference, and this is a company, a country that does not have English as their first language. Now, the purpose for which I went had support systems in place. But one day I decided to venture out for some exercise and lost my way in the process. And I never felt so uncomfortable because there was nobody there who understood English to be able to direct me in relation to where it is that I need to go. I remember feeling so lost and confused until I came across one person. And when the gentleman said, yes, I know English, I shouted and I said, thank you, Lord. And that was how I was able to make my way to the center that I was staying in. Now, I truly understand what inaccessibility felt like in that experience. Accommodation can be simplified, use of multiple formats in relation to presenting information, as well as use a variety, not just print or audio, demonstration, pictorial. Make sure that the variety of presentation formats are accessible. And the last barrier is stigma. And I know we talk a lot about this. Some people downplay stigma, but I want to tell you that stigma is perhaps the most significant barrier in relation to people with intellectual disability accessing services within the community. People are still treated as if they are patients or people who we expect to be escorted for services. So when somebody sees somebody with intellectual disability coming in for a service, so where is your mother? Where is your family member? As if these persons are not individuals and are not able to access services on their own. You see, what we all need to be aware of, there are less institutions housing people with intellectual disability. So they are living in communities. They want to have their own lives and have some autonomy over their lives. And so they are going to walk into a service agency and they want to be served like everybody else. And therefore, we have to get our act together in relation to what it is that we put in place to address the needs of this group of persons. Yes, training is important. Training of our people within that service point. We need to train them about disability awareness needs. We need to train them about what to do. Because a lot of times, people know about the disability, but they don't know how to meet the needs of the disability groupings. And so we have to move it to a step further to really, really address that. How do we remove these barriers? The first step is addressing the stigma issue. Right? Stigma and discrimination. Recognizing that these people have a right. This is not tokenism. This is not us doing them a favor, but as a citizen of Jamaica, they have a right to have accessible information. They have a right to go into any service area and be served by the people who are there. So that's the first step. The second step is that we need to be creative in developing some solutions that will integrate. You see, all of those barriers that we talk about, the literacy level, the complexity level, the pace at which we present information, the solutions that are developed need to capture all of those elements. And that's the only way that we will move Jamaica as a society into the realm of accessible information. And finally, by acknowledging the rights of people with intellectual disability to receive not only health care, education, employment, transportation, leisure services, but being able to access those. Access to the clinics, the schools, the offices, the banks, and other service points in an equal, respectable, independent, and safe manner. No, we are at this stage in our lives when the tokenism really don't cut it. We are at the stage when we need to put our heads together and come up with creative solutions so that we can impact people's lives in a meaningful way. And not just about buildings, ladies and gentlemen. Think about communication and access to information.
Thank you very much, Mrs. McCoy. Finally, Kamar Groves. Tell me if you need the mic.
Mic check. Hearing? Is everybody hearing? Yes, no. Interpreter speaking. All right. Okay. So, sorry you keep interrupting, but all right. So, good morning again. And my name is Kamar Groves, and I am here to talk about the deaf people. We have experienced many barriers, and a lot of times there are other different barriers in place. But deafness can also come with another disability. Some deaf people are also blind and also have a physical disability, and this might impact them. So, in the case of working at a hospital, some deaf people cannot get an interpreter at the hospital on time. For an instance, a deaf person might say, okay, go to the hospital, they try to write, but when they write, it's not being understood. And when they arrive on time, they say, okay, we need to get an interpreter, and a lot of hearing people will go through before us. And sometimes we as deaf people, we want independence. So we call customer service and we try to get a way to get an interpreter, but there is no independence. And the time takes so long, and there are many we know are trying to rebuild and make Jamaica more accessible. So after the hurricane, we can't just rebuild without consulting. We have to consult with the deaf people and we say, okay, this can work, and we move on. We can't just move on and establish these things and put things in place without feedback from the deaf people, right? So it's important that if you want to establish something, rebuild something, you ask the deaf people, how can we do this? And get feedback and make the necessary adjustments to move on. So to be accessible does not mean to only be able to transport or move. It also means to be able to communicate, to get information, and all these other things. And we have to think again and figure out how we can do this. And it's important. Just consult with the deaf people. Everything, we get all of these information, all this feedback, and we can move forward. So many times we as the deaf community, we have advocates and we have our team that advocate for our rights and our needs, but this doesn't only work. We need support so we can move on appropriately. So now, as I observe everything that takes place today, we know that there's not a physical interpreter, right? We have to use someone on Zoom. And they're making a good effort, but sometimes, you know, you can ask the deaf people, can they see us? Are these things better for us so we can better improve moving on? So consultation is really important. And also, our team, our deaf community, we want to achieve different things. So we have to go to meetings with different people, with different disability associations and groups, the JCPD, the CDA. We have to work together for success. And sometimes we move forward and we try to do things at a fast pace. And we say, oh yeah, we know what to do, but when we state our needs, we say, oh no, but the boss, he's telling us this. No. I want to give an example, right? And recently we had the debates, right? We as the deaf community, we did not get a proper interpreter. I understand the situation, but we want the proper sizing as well on the TV. So we want to have to make a decision as to where the proper sizing of the interpreter size is able to be seen on the TV, right? Because when the person is speaking, everybody can hear, but the interpreter is too small, so we cannot see. So maybe you can make it be half size so that everybody can have access. The hearing people are hearing. They can hear everything and they can see the face. They can even see the hairs, the mustache and everything, right? But when we explain this, sometimes people just don't get it. So how can we empower deaf people? Try to listen and then make moves. So we have everything that's accessible. We have the information. And if it doesn't work, we state it to the DRT and we move forward. But we have to remember, nothing about us without us. Remember, we need the support. Any support that you want to provide, ask the deaf community. So I thank you for listening, and I hope what I said, it will resonate with you. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a... Right, so this is the way we clap for deaf person. Thank you very much. So we have heard from the different disability groups as to what is required when we speak of universal design and accessibility. And now I'm going to be inviting the minister or architect and Mrs. McCoy, who is going to be joining us for the panel. Ms. Spinner? Is it Ms. McCoy or Ms. Spinner? And Mr. McLean. So for the panel, as you come along, please. Honorable Minister. Then you. Okay, so we have an excellent panel led by our Minister, Honorable Pernell Charles Jr., and he's our Minister of Labor and Social Security. And we have Miss Sanya Williams. She is an executive member of the Jamaican Association of Architects. We have two of our members of the disability community, Mrs. Marilyn McCoy, who spoke to intellectual disabilities, and Mr. McLean, who spoke to persons who are visually impaired and blind. And they are going to present their opening statements, and then we are going to have an interaction with you, the audience, as we look at how we can rebuild an accessible Jamaica moving forward post-Melissa. Thank you so very much. Minister, your opening remarks, sir.
Well, good morning to everyone. Let me, of course, acknowledge Dr. Hendricks and all of the heads of the various associations, our presenters, and, of course, the entire community of persons with disabilities and those who are here to learn, to listen, and also to support. It's a very important day. My opening remarks don't need to be extended. A lot has been said, a lot has been repeated, a lot has been emphasized. I want to, from a government perspective, reiterate that this is a national priority for us. I want to make it very clear that the days of the discussion around persons with disabilities being some kind of side issue or a charity issue should be way behind us. It must be understood that all Jamaicans are required to be at full capacity by removing barriers for us to appreciate and achieve national development and to achieve sustainable development. And so on this day, when we acknowledge or recognize persons with disabilities, it is an opportunity for the government to affirm its posture and to affirm that for us, the underutilized potential must now be given all of the energy and support needed for it to explode in a positive way. Particularly at a time like now when so many are suffering from the impact of Hurricane Melissa. You have seen me going in and out. No disrespect to any of the presenters. It's because as I am here, I have to still, Dr. Hendricks, be treating with issues in the West that are coming up. Emergency matters relating to vulnerable groups, particularly persons with disabilities who have been impacted by this hurricane, who many persons may not know the name or even hear of the situation, but just step back and imagine the difficulties that they're facing. So it is an opportunity for us as a nation to really embrace our own potential, our collective potential, and to really try to make accessibility, inclusion, and these words much more than catchphrases. Professor Morris, when he was here before he departed to the activity that he spoke of, mentioned a number of things that would have been also repeated by Alistair, and challenge the government. And I think that we need to do more of that. I know I'm the minister, and I'm the one who is being put as the face of the government here, but we need to be challenged. A big part of what this community must do is we must continue to advocate for change. We must continue to disrupt and to push and to demand that things not remain the same, but that the evolution is expedited. Jamaica must become what it can be, which is the prime example of a small island developing state that seeks to achieve its national potential by finding a way for all Jamaicans to participate and contribute. So that's where I am for now, and I'm looking forward to the further discussions, Dr. Hendricks.
Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you so very much. Indeed, as a community, we must challenge, push the envelope. That is how we got here, and that's how we're going to keep moving forward. Thank you so much, Minister, for being willing to accept the challenge. Thank you. Let's put our hands together for Minister who shared with us. Ms. Williams from the Architects Professionals.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sana Williams from the Jamaican Institute of Architects. I'm representing the Executive Council, and we are here to support you. I've learned a lot today. A lot I thought I knew about, And I'm uncovering that there's much more to learn about this particular community. And I'm humbled to be invited here. What I can share with you is that the community of architects, our purpose is to serve Jamaica by ensuring that we have a safe built environment. And a part of our mandate is to ensure that within every community or every infrastructure that we are a part of, or in terms of designing or we're responsible for ensuring it's erected appropriately, it stands within the legislative framework of Jamaican people. We're also here to educate and to uphold a professional standard. What I can assure you is that within our building code and within the legislative framework, there are several things already in place to ensure accessibility is considered. We're taught this in our universities. I'm actually we as architects, we're always baffled by how behind we are in implementing particular things, especially in our public infrastructure, because we would probably fail if you put it that way, in university, if we were to present a public design for a building that is not accessible, that has no consideration for universal design. And so I am hoping that we do more of this conversation so that we understand where the gap lies. It is in implementation. It is in accountability. And I'm here to let you know that we have knowledge as professionals, right? And you can access our services. We are accessible, and we do promote accessibility in designs, especially with renovations. And I'm very aware that the municipal councils enforce this. And so if there's some sort of retrofitting for schools, which are some recent developments, we are asked to ensure that they are made accessible. But I believe what the issue is, it's too slow. It's too slow, and it is not considering our immediate needs, and so more needs to be done. So I'm here to answer your questions. I'm here to provide professional expertise, and we remain accessible to the public. You can call our offices. We have an office that you can call, and that information can be provided to you all at the end of this discussion, so you can access us. And all the architects that are registered have been trained to ensure that there is inclusion, right? So rest assured, if you have that kind of need to design your home, to ask about a public building, what is going on, we can give some amount of advice. And we're here also to advise the public agencies and to support this community directly. So I'm looking forward to your questions.
You know, in looking at this area of accessibility and its impact on persons with intellectual disability, I want to just emphasize, whatever is made accessible to persons with intellectual disability, everybody benefits. Every citizen of Jamaica will benefit from all the creative solutions to promote accessibility across this nation. Everybody benefits from those solutions. I also want to just emphasize, we talk a lot about inclusion, but if people's accessibility needs are not met, they are actually excluded. And yes, the needs of persons with intellectual disability may differ from somebody with physical challenges, but the truth is that we need to put programs in place to begin to address these unmet needs. So here we are, we talk a lot about information. And in Jamaica, we produce a lot of information. But the information is not made accessible to some people. And so we have to just look at how it is that we can recreate, repurpose some of that information to ensure that everybody can participate in services using the information. So I'm open to questions, and I really hope that this is the beginning. I think about consultants. Right now we are in the rebuilding process. There are organizations that have to now look at how it is that they pass information on to different groups of people. It is important that we collaborate. You don't just bring a consultant in to do the work. You ensure that this consultant will communicate and interact with agencies serving people with disabilities so that the needs of this community are met in whatever solutions you implement, you develop and implement. So I really am encouraged. And no, this is a disaster that nobody thought possible of. But we think about disaster, but I think about what is possible after disaster, the rebuilding process. And we are at this juncture in our country where we can build back better. Thank you very much.
The era of the charity model is over. We have to embrace the rights-based approach and apply that to empowering persons with disabilities. You see, disability is not inability. And many times it is the barriers that prevents us from optimizing, from fulfilling our potential that we have. And, you know, when Dr. Hendricks introduced me earlier, she mentioned that I am wearing several hats and I am conflicted in terms of how to really articulate myself, because, of course, sitting on the JCPD board, I am accountable for what the government implement. However, given my years of advocacy and me being the vice chairman for the Combined Disabilities Association, and the fact that I interact with persons with a myriad of disabilities, I am not divorced from the problems that persons with disabilities face. And when I talk to quote-unquote regular, the common man out there, I say, look, you know, we should all embrace making the environment accessible for persons with disability. And why? Why? You should view it as an insurance policy. Yes? Because at some point, there's a high likelihood that you will have some form of disability. I am a member of the Social and Economic Empowerment Grants Committee. And many of the persons who apply for grants, apply for support through the JCPD, they were never persons who were born with any form of disability. Some of these persons develop disability through an NCD, such as a stroke, diabetes, heart disease, and some of these things led to other complications. So if we get it right, if we embrace universal access design, we will all benefit. There's, in the Disabilities Act mentioned reasonable arrangements. When we look in the mirror, can we honestly say that the arrangements are reasonable now to accommodate persons with disabilities? We have a long and far way to go. The Constitution speaks to right of privacy. The Constitution also speaks to freedom of expression. And when we look at an issue such as persons accessing the polling stations. Yes, a lot of the polling stations are inaccessible persons with physical disabilities. It poses a barrier for them to go out and exercise their franchise. Persons who are blind, while we are able to use someone to exercise our right to vote, it is something that erodes our privacy. And it is time that the ROPA be amended so that we can be empowered to vote for ourselves. It is done in other countries, and it is something that we need to do here in Jamaica. So, in closing, before we delve further in the discussion, we should be an all-encompassing society that embraces the freedoms, whether it be social rights, whether it be economic participation, or participation in public life. We should embrace everyone. Because we say, as Jamaicans, our motto is, out of many, one people, and that one people definitely should include persons with disabilities. And we just want the opportunity to equitably, and notice I did not say equally, because equity, what is equity for someone who has intellectual disability is not necessarily equity for someone who is a wheelchair user, or someone who is deaf, or someone who is a low vision person. So we are pushing for equity in society so that we can take our rightful place, live, work, raise family, and do business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so very much. You know, I'm particularly pleased this morning into afternoon to have, you know, this panel here today. I am particularly pleased to have our minister. And I say that because there was a time, International Day for Persons with Disabilities, we wouldn't have a minister sitting down and talking about disability. And what it says to me is that he is genuinely interested. And you know why I say that? The minister should have been boarding a plane by now, don't it, Minister? And I remember on Friday, as we signed the declaration of intent with the UN team to partner with the JCPD going forward, and by extension the ministry, and we spoke about today's event, he said he's going to see how best he can push back his flight. Maybe it is not happening today at all, to accommodate this. And what it says to me, Minister, if I never believe it before, I see it. Today you have demonstrated that you not only care about persons with disabilities, but you are interested in Jamaica's future. Because ensuring that Jamaica becomes accessible is ensuring that all of us, when we get to, if we get to 80 and 90, we have an elderly population, you know, we have an aging population. When we get there, today will ensure that we can move around. Absolutely. And we can access services at the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, at the Ministry of Education, at the tax office, at the post office, at the police station, at the courthouse. We can access the service there. We can access justice. And so I look forward to this conversation, not only be a conversation in this room and online, but it will translate in building the West. Let the West be an example of accessibility, of what Jamaica should look like. Let the West model what Jamaica should look like. And then we in the East will follow suit. Thank you so much, Minister. I am also pleased with our architect, our representative from the Institute of Architects. And as she spoke, she said and resonated with us the fact that they know, they learned it. And if they did a design without access in school, they would fail. And so I would believe that our architects and our builders, they know. But sometimes I'm not sure what happens. They miss the measurements. Because a ramp is just an inch outside of the standard for how to build a ramp, and you end up building a slope. Easy as that. And how many of us would prefer to use a larger bathroom than squindle up in the, don't it? All of us would prefer the accessible bathroom to the smaller cubicles. So we benefit from ensuring access is in place. When I think of persons with intellectual disabilities, it's your passion, Mrs. McCoy. Pictures speak 1,000 words. When we see an exit sign and we see the picture of a man or a frame walking through a door, we don't even have to ask if that is exit. We just know that that is exit. So rather than tell the person, go down the corridor, turn left, turn right, the first door, and when you go through that door, you go up the stairs, and then the first door on your left. Mighty goodness, by the time you reach the first door, you don't remember. Whether you have an intellectual disability or not, you don't remember. And so signage becomes critical. When you go to KFC or Burger King, and their menu is so small, you have to be squinting. It's not only persons with low vision benefit if they had it big and bold. Everybody benefits. Similarly, for persons who are blind. When we have it in audio format, sometimes you're walking past, you don't have no time to read, you hear it. We benefit from audiobooks. And so access, making our lives or making Jamaica more accessible, space and place, will benefit our economy, will benefit our people, will bring more tourists to Jamaica, because you know that a lot of elderly people have disposable income, you know, but their families won't come if they can't take their mom or their grandma. So let it be the driving force going forward. We're open for questions, and if the panel has anything to say before we jump into the questions, you're free to do so.
I think one of the reasons, and I'm speaking now from commentary that I've received from contractors, homeowners, just constituents who I speak to about the pivot that is required for us to actually move to full accessibility. A lot of what you hear, Dr. Hendricks, Ms. McCoy, is money. We don't have the money to do it. We don't have the money to be able to fix this building for everyone. So we do it for the most. And I call it financial myopia, where you think that what you're using now or your investment is making sense for you today, when it will not make sense for you in the long run or for tomorrow, particularly because, again, the effort of the government arising and consequent to the Disabilities Act, consequent to the partnership with the Bureau of Standards, with the municipal corporations, with the architects, for the building codes to now make certain requirements of accessibility, we will be focusing on enforcement. And, you know, I don't take lightly the challenge to the Ministry of Labor and Social Security. If you are in the meetings with me, you will understand that I am the advocate, not the minister only. I am the one that is trying to push and pull and ensure that our buildings must be the example And we're not there yet. But we're going to get there, I can tell you. One of the conversations I had when I stepped out was just to make contact with NIF, who has charge of most of the buildings of which we occupy, to ask for a status update on the ministry's activity towards either identifying where we have accessibility deficiencies and determining what will be the strategy to attend to those situations. We have one in Clarendon, where I am, which is a building that needs to be rectified, or for us to move out of that building into a purpose-built infrastructure that can truly accommodate all Jamaicans. And so I just want to make it clear that as a ministry, we acknowledge, we are aware of our own responsibilities, and we are taking the necessary action to step out boldly before we start to talk to other persons. The government must lead by example, and the ministry that has responsibility for persons with disabilities must be the one that you can look to as an example. Again, we're not there, but we are going to get there, and we have that strategy now being implemented.
Thank you very much, Minister. And I would say for those who believe that they don't have the money, universal design saves money. The cost of failure is enormous. Retrofitting is what is expensive, but building with universal design from the get-go is fiscally responsible. And so we need to understand that it will cost you more in the long run if we do not do it right the first time. So yes, to retrofit will cost. But if we're at ground zero. Let's say we're at ground zero in the West. Good place. Do it universally designed. You will save yourself, you will save money, you will build an economy that will boost your business. You know how many people with disabilities can come spend their money in your store, in your supermarket? Can't do their business well. Come on, man, you're losing money. Build fiscally responsible. Build universally designed. I see one hand down in the audience. And we have to be wrapping up.
Afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, so I've been listening, and we know the topic is building back and universal design and all of that stuff. Minister, I think you need to use up the influence more, because we know how Jamaica work. We're not going to really, we know it's nice to come here and talk, but we also know how Jamaica run. So you see, Minister Mackenzie, local government, he's not here. I don't think there's a local government representative here. But take the influence outside of the Ministry of Labor and Social Security and bring it into local government. Because when you talk about build back and you talk about sidewalks, roads, that kind of stuff, local government ministry has to be integral in that process. And I would love if you use the influence you have, the office you have. You see him at cabinet, you see him probably at social functions. Talk to him. Try and see how best he can get the parish councils to see the importance of building back and incorporating these things. Because how Jamaica work, Minister, is that who can get away with something, get away with it. Enough buildings we see do, and because some people have money, them build it a particular way and them get away with it. Because them money stays so. And we know that. We not go around the thing. So I'm saying to you that in spite of how these things may work, and we see some building bill and some people get away with things, and sidewalk bill and them plant tree in the middle of the sidewalk, and them get away with it because them money stay so. I'm saying to you that relationships, networks can also help to influence how these things shape. And it is time we stop underestimate these relationships and these networks and use them up. Try make Mr. Mackenzie become a friend of the community and use film influence alongside with the local government and the parish councils to get these things up and going. I really believe in building back the West, and I really believe that we can get it done, but some integral people who should have there missing, and them people that we need to sit down and talk with them. I hope Minister Mackenzie would have, along with his team, grasp and understand universal design, what them think they mean and what it look like. Those people need to be at the table, and that's all I'm asking of you. I'm not asking for no money. I just want you to take the influence out of labor and social security and carry it over local government, because them can make the thing work.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Any other question, or Minister, you want to respond?
Well, good comment. I think that it is critical for us to partner across government, across all different sectors. And we've started the conversation. I mean, it's a conversation that I've brought up not just to Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, but as a conversation in Cabinet. The intention that we have is to write on specific issues to ministries and also to organizations and companies like JPS, and then to put together a cabinet note that can really amplify the need for us to have more constructive and practical solutions being implemented, not just spoken about by the various ministries. So again, I have no objection to what you have said. I can support it. And just to let you know that it's something that we have already started, and we will continue and we'll expand it as well. Some of the things I heard here today, I've already advised my advisor, Ms. Mitchell, and we're putting it in, we're chronicling it in written form to send, for instance, the issues relating to the polls and other things that were mentioned will be put in letter form and sent out by tomorrow to the relevant authorities.
Thank you very much, Minister. Partnership and relationships are really, really important. We have heard mayors across different parishes speak to, ensuring access. We've heard of mayors having experience that would make them physically unable, and having that experience would propel them to indicate that they will ensure that the building plans that come to them will be made, they will ensure accessibility is a feature. We look forward to, Minister, to have that conversation with them a little deeper. We did speak with the CEOs of the municipal councils a year or two ago, but we have to go back in to the conversation, and having your voice, I know that we will get further in to ensure that access becomes the norm rather than the exception. Any other question? What would be somebody yes? Yes, Ms. Goff, Mrs. Smallwood.
You like my name?
Yes.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Minister, a lot of things flow through our mind, but we don't have time to go through all of it. However, I am wondering, we sometimes... I need to stand?
Not necessarily.
No. Somebody say that? No. They must stand. Since I'm little, maybe they want to see me better. Yes, so I'm wondering, Minister, if I noticed, like, for in the budget for organizations and more than likely for the ministries, you have certain things that must appear in the budget. I am wondering if, since we have a situation where accessibility is a problem, you have some people building ramps here, and after they build the ramps, they have made their place accessible. Some people putting up thing in large print, it is accessible to blind person, but it's only one building, and it is on a height that you can't even see it. I am thinking that if it's possible to improve and to expedite the thrust to make our country as accessible as possible, apart from, building back and during the building back process and onward, if it would be good for each ministry each year in their budget to have an accessibility component, which means that it would help in solving the issue of not having enough money to do it right away, and it would deal with progressive realization as well. So in the JCPD budget, for example, or in the ministry's budget, there needs to be an elevator that needs to have speech and all the other things, and to accommodate different types of disabilities. So in our budget for 2016 to 2017, under the accessibility component, we are going to put in a ramp at X Point or an X office in Maypen or get a new building, something like that. We have to have a budget each year to realize the dream that Dr. Hendricks spoke about of reaching 80 and being able to move around. So I'm suggesting that accessibility, we talk about it. We do ad hoc things here and there. We have the act, and as the person from the architecture, speak, I think we need a plan that says that every year this is going to be done, and it doesn't restrict us to only doing that, but we have to at least have this component in our budget to improve accessibility. Oh, and also, Minister, somebody is here telling me, remember the signs, the parking signs.
Yes, and the parking spaces, yeah.
And spaces, of course.
So just to put it concise, the answer is yes. I completely agree. I would actually expand on that, in the discussions that we're having at the ministry now, we see accessibility beyond just as a persons with disabilities issue. Because remember, we have the NCSC, and we have other vulnerable groups that we have charged for. And so we will be advancing the accessibility narrative and the discussion around accessibility in a more national way. Of course, highlighting the various issues and how it impacts the different groups, like the persons with disabilities, like our senior citizens, like our ESP children who have disabilities as well. But what I would do, Miss Gloria, as you have my mother's name, is perhaps to invite you after we have finished the discussions, perhaps within another 2 weeks. I'll either invite you to a meeting at the ministry or we can have a conversation just to really give you the details of what the strategy is going forward around bringing more persons into the conversation and what we plan to do as a ministry to advance it in a more strategic way, as you have said. And what you said is one of the options that we're looking on. How do we get a budget for accessibility beyond just the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, beyond just JCPD? How do we make it a priority so that other persons, when they receive the budget, don't then via that into something else, which is one of the issues that came up in terms of the budgeting around it. And also, we have actually started the conversation around reaching out to embassies and seeing how those embassies and other partners could help us in this effort towards accessibility by driving innovation for inclusion and using some of the technology and things that they have in the other jurisdictions to be implemented here in Jamaica. So there's a lot going on, a lot of conversation, but I can commit to you, Ms. Gloria, that we will, perhaps in the next 2 weeks, I'll ask Ms. Mitchell to set it up, that in the next 2 weeks, we can have a conversation with you or a meeting around this issue.
Thank you very much. We have one question from our deaf community.
Everybody here?
Yes.
All right, so my name is Andre, and based on my observation for the deaf community, communication access is what we need. So JSL needs to be recognized as an official language because it has not been recognized as an official language and it has been impacting us. So when will this be done? When the police stations and the public service stations are free, when we make a report to the police station, deaf people have to bring our own interpreters. And sometimes deaf people don't have the money. They can't report it. And sometimes the police stations will be willing to get the interpreters, but we have to wait 2 weeks later. Why? Why is this so? And there are two factual situations that happened. A person got the wrong medication and they actually died because of that. And another lady got the wrong medication, a wrong prescription, and had something severe happen to her. So we cannot wait until tomorrow, wait next year. No. I teach many students and they come through to the classes and I check with the students and they say, and I say, why you don't learn sign language before? And I just realized that they don't know about sign language. So we say the solution is we have many schools in Jamaica. We have schools all across and we should introduce JSL as a subject in the classes. So when they graduate, they have the basic signing communications and they can sign anywhere so we don't have to stress ourselves. Last year, I went to Brazil, me, myself, and one thing I learned is that the Brazilian university, if students are graduating, they have to complete the sign language course. If you don't complete the sign language course, you cannot graduate. So again, when will JSL be recognized as an official language?
So that is the cry from the deaf community to enable them to have access to our society. Jamaican Sign Language needs to be recognized as an official language. I know that it is one of the questions when we have to report to the United Nations on how Jamaica is implementing the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. It is something that we need to push forward on the agenda to ensure that deaf persons are not left behind as we move towards our 2030 agenda, but JSL is considered as an official language. Strangely enough, Senator and I were talking about the same thing this morning, and he was saying he'll soon retire, and he will really want to be pushing that JSL becomes an official language, because it is important. So for each, so sidewalks are important for the blind, for the persons with physical disabilities. Easy to understand language is important for persons with intellectual disabilities. For persons with low vision, it is big and bold writing. Braille for those who are blind, or audio. And for the deaf, it is Jamaican Sign Language. If we all learn it from basic school, we won't have to pay expensive interpretation. It is really something that as a country we really need to get behind and talk about.
And on a final note, just to encourage us, that 10 or so years ago, there was the buzzword around disability in development. I don't hear that anymore. We need to get back to that basics where every agency, every ministry in government needs to understand that whatever plans are being put in place, they have to consider the needs of persons with disabilities. You know, every day I look on social media or I see on television where not just the ministries, but agencies, corporate agencies, are so creative in advertising their services. It's not an issue of money. It's an issue of just being a little more creative and collaborative in ensuring that the information that's put out is inclusive enough. Yes. So it's not just about money.
But you know what I have found, even if you watch movie nowadays, do you recognize that people with disabilities are in movies?
Yes.
People with disabilities are in ads. And so we're building internationally and locally too an inclusive environment, and we want to adopt it fully so that we get there. Progressive realization is real, but as Ms. Goff said, we need to plan.
Yes.
1 year, this is what we're going to do. Next year, this is what we're going to do until we get there eventually.
Yes.
Finally.
So for communication for persons who are deaf, it is very important. It is something that I've always looked at. And separate and apart from, bolstering the ability of persons to communicate by making the sign language official, there are some basic things that we can do to empower persons who are deaf and hard of hearing. Just something simply like ensuring that where you have doors where someone inside would open the door, they would press a buzzer to open the door. Mind you, these persons are not hearing. So you need to have flashing lights that can indicate that, yes, someone has buzzed the door. Something basic as that. Let us look at closed captioning. And my good friend Damien mentioned networking across government. And in this respect, we have to look at how do we, for especially for local programming, news broadcast and so on, ensure that all of that is broadcasted with closed captioning. So that must be part of the licensing agreement for entities that have access to the spectrum license. Because persons who are deaf and hard of hearing, their dignity should be respected.
Thank you so very much. We're giving our panelists their final statements. So maybe you can wrap yours, Madam Williams.
Sure.
In your final statement.
Sure. I have one burning comment or observation. As an institute, we've had several discussions surrounding Melissa and our response. Generally speaking, after every disaster, a country is to have a well-known and understood emergency response. Right? Other countries have done it to ensure that text messages are sent, there are sounds, certain alarm sounds, so everyone will know this sort of emergency is impending and this is the response. However, one of the things we recognize, for example, with the container building suggestion about the 5,000 container building, some may not be as accessible or reported that they may not be as accessible or it was not necessarily planned. So what I'm hoping to see in the future is that emergency response is so well planned that this particular community is aware of the plan and would be a part of the plan in terms of receiving from the emergency shelter accommodations that is easily understood or communicated to you. So all certain shelters like schools, which have been completely disposed of by Melissa, would have been retrofitted in a particular way so that persons with disabilities can easily be a part of emergency shelters. There are responses to collect persons with disabilities who have mobility issues to get them to shelters. That's well known, because I'm recognizing that our responses are not necessarily broadcasted in a way that we all are connected to. So we need to use our social media a little bit more, and we need to know which resources we have. You do have professionals here that can aid in the decision making for the rebuilding. And that's the final comment I'd like to make. So when the West will be developed, ensure that the architects are involved, the engineers are involved, the quantity surveyors, the land surveyors, the geotechnical engineers. We are here to ensure your safety. That's the most paramount part of it. While the communication seems to be an issue, I would love for us to have more forums so we can bridge that barrier. Because some of us do not understand the depth of what access really means, especially in my field where the built environment access is understood on the communication level, ensuring you have the proper exit signs. All of these things are embedded in us, but to have a real dialogue and to be around persons who are dealing with these things day in, day out, it really adds a difference. And for our clients, we get to experience them in person, but we don't always experience the end user in the same way. So be a part of the forum for change for the West. Ensure that you are in the decision making for the urban redevelopment plans. Whatever those plans are, I am hoping that we will get invited as the built environment, as well as this particular community, so that we can remove the barriers, because we are here to serve and we are willing to serve. But I believe we need to collaborate a little bit more effectively to ensure that the future can now be thought of and planned for now. We plan, and so we are here to plan with you. That's my invitation to you all.
Yes?
For me, communication and information packaging is critical and must be implemented alongside the infrastructural, because you can have the most beautiful and accessible buildings, and yet the information to the people is the same old. We need to move beyond that.
My final words: consistency and collective effort. Consistency speaks to the fact that we don't need to have these discussions once a year. It should just be something that becomes a normal part of our DNA. And this crisis, we must not waste it. Yes, so consistency is key. And the collective effort basically speak to all hands on deck. We are going to need the private sector. Already I can think about business opportunity. I mean, already we should have an app that, gives off some notification where the different potholes pop up. Yeah? We do have that already? Oh, wonderful. But we can always enhance that these things are accessible. So we need an all-hands-on-deck approach. The private sector, of course, you look at government, part of accessibility must be, we look at accessibility and we're looking at inclusion. Now government is the biggest purchaser. The data shows that government is the biggest purchaser of goods and services. Many of the disability stakeholders groups have social enterprises. How can the government partner with these stakeholder groups to purchase goods and services, provided that they meet the procurement standards? Those things must be considered. So it's an all hands on deck approach, and we will build the inclusive society that we want to see.
Thank you very much.
Well, finally, the Prime Minister yesterday, when we were speaking, said he's going to be moving away from building back better and moving towards building forward stronger. And I understand the shift in thinking to be that all of what we have discussed here now has to become part of a strategy that is actioned. It's very easy to talk about it. It's very easy to understand the importance of it. But the real challenge for us is going to be getting these issues to become priority for all. Getting the society at a very early age to adopt a posture that allows for us to develop, whether it is in infrastructure, in culture, in communication, but to develop the pathways for accessibility to be a norm. Our responsibility at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security is a huge one. We are the advocates, we are the ones who are set to develop the frameworks, legislative and otherwise, to make all of this happen. And we cannot do it alone. The reality is that it will only be done through purposeful partnership. And I want to acknowledge Dr. Hendricks and all who put this forum together, because the conversation here has not only brought back to the surface many of the issues that we have been discussing, but I think it emphasizes the importance of moving on these discussions right now. And I really, really want to adopt the submission around consistency and in making sure that this is not just an International Day for Persons with Disabilities discussion, but it must be an every day, every week, every month discussion until we reach where we have to reach. And I want to welcome you. I want to encourage you, as I close, to continue to be very vociferous with your challenging. Be strong with your conversation. I welcome it. I need it. Because believe me, we're doing a lot of things. And so sometimes it is important to hear the challenges and to hear that it be put to you directly as minister. I will continue to do my part in advocating. And we intend in the next month, I must tell you, we're going to get down to business, Dr. Hendricks, in truly now putting pen to paper in getting the communication across to the other ministries, across those organizations. So we start 2026 on a very strong note in ensuring that we are truly coming up with solutions that are practical and that can be implemented for the benefit of this very important group of persons with disabilities. No one in Jamaica should be left behind.
Can we put our hands together? Well said. Thank you so much. Well said. Well said. Well said. And so we have our marching orders, partnerships, ensuring that we get the implementation right. Ensure that we, ministries, agencies, departments, private sector know the role that they should play in ensuring that we build an accessible Jamaica. Building collaborations and partnerships with our international persons and organizations, or local, national organizations and persons. And the man on the street, or people with disabilities, I heard Mr. Grove say over and over in his presentation, consult with the deaf, consult with the deaf, consult with the deaf. And I think sometimes in our effort to do good, we forget the people that we're doing the good on behalf of. And so we leave them out of the conversation, run ahead of them. And then when we get to a place, we have to, what were we supposed to do again? And we have to retrace our steps. But let us, in going forward, ensure that we talk to the right people, we get what needs to be done. And I'm sure in the next chapter of our lives, 40 years down the road, 20 years down the road, when we look back, somebody will remember this conversation and see the progress that was made and appreciate the Jamaica that started. Well, I wouldn't say we started today, but we took the conversation further today, ensuring that we have this crisis and we create an opportunity to make sure Jamaica becomes more accessible. Thank you so very much. We move forward together. Have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you for coming. Lunch is served on your way out.